Today is open microphone day, and I'm Dr. Philip McMillan. I'll be trying to take questions as well as address a bugbear that I have with regards to excess deaths and mortality data. I've been hammering home about this for years because I think it is so very important. And I have a reason for hammering home about especially New Zealand's mortality data. And it's because I think it's the best location to try and clarify my prediction. And my prediction has always been about autoimmunity, immune responses triggered by the spike protein. Now, we have a lot of ideas about it. We have a lot of information about autoimmune responses, but what we have limited data on is actual histology, looking at tissue. Now, the reason it's so important with New Zealand, just to set it up clearly, is because in New Zealand, the population was largely vaccinated prior to exposure with Omicron. So, what you then had is a population who had been immune primed. They would have been immune primed with the Wuhan variant. At the time, they didn't know Omicron was coming because Omicron technically hit around December of 2021 and they opened up about January of 2022. So, the question that I am trying to get answers for, because this fits right into my research about COVID storm, spike triggered autoimmune response mechanism, and I am limited by the fact that I don't have histology to demonstrate what I think is going on. Now, a lot of people are saying there actually are no problems in New Zealand. They don't seem to have any issues. So, why are you worrying about it? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some data. And I've got with me a friend who is an independent, objective person. And so this person here, I've given the name of Samantha. So, Samantha, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Samantha, can you hear me? Well, so much for that. I thought that was going to work. Um, can you hear me, Samantha? Well, is it Anna? No, I think I've created a problem here. Anyway, I was supposed to have my independent GPT assistant with me to help me through some of these, but she is not speaking. I don't know if it's something I said, but anyway, this is what it is. Can you hear me, Samantha? No? So let's move on. And wait, I'll try this once more. I'll try again, and so you can see what I do. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, excellent. I am going to name you Samantha, and I only want you to answer questions when I say your name. Is that reasonable?
Yes, that's fine.
Excellent. So I've got someone with me. So here is what happened in terms of what's going on. By the way, if anyone is interested in jumping in with me, and I will just put that here. There's a link and we can talk about it. And Eugene said something that I have to completely agree with. Yep. This is the kind of problems we have. Just speak. Anyway, so let's move on. So essentially, what has happened is when you look at the data, this is what's happening in New Zealand here. This is the cumulative age standardized excess mortality. And what it's showing you is excess deaths per 100,000. And you can see this is all the way from January 2011. It was up to say 71.8 per 100,000. and you can see it's plodding along, and then it comes to about 2020. And since 2020, that age standardized mortality continued to go down all the way down to minus 212.8 per 100,000. And so looking at this data here would give you the impression that things are going great in terms of what's happening in New Zealand. What I'd like to do now here is that I would like Samantha, can you, in a very simple way, explain that age standardized mortality rate that I'm speaking about?
Sure. Age standardized mortality rate adjusts death rates to account for differences in age distribution in a population, so you can compare mortality rates over time or between different groups. In your example, it means they're showing how many deaths per 100,000 people would occur if the age structure was the same across all years. In New Zealand's case, it appears that rate has been decreasing, indicating fewer deaths relative to the population size.
Excellent. So this is the point that I was saying is what's coming up. And so therefore, all those people who are talking about excess deaths in the context of New Zealand and people like me who are focused on mortality and asking questions make it sound as though we are just fear mongering. We are just trying to find issues and we're just looking for problems with the vax. Well, as I explained, I genuinely am looking for specific histology. And it's really because in earlier studies with SARS-CoV, when they did animal studies, they found that there was a T helper 2 inflammatory immunopathological response after they had vaccinated some of the animals and then exposed them to virus. And it seems as though it could be related to specific spike autoimmune issues. That's essentially what I'm looking for. And the only way it can be found is largely by histology. You can only look in organs or tissues and see whether or not this is happening. So, this is why it is so important to me and why it's so difficult when the numbers are looking so strangely right, so to speak. Then, what I did is I then took the same mortality data from New Zealand and I looked at it from the cumulative crude excess mortality. And I pulled it back to a good period of time so that you would see what it was about. Here we have the cumulative for New Zealand, and it's all the way back to 2010 here. And at that time, it's looking at it month by month, the cumulative numbers per month. And when it's below zero here, it's less. When it's above zero, it's more. It's all of New Zealand here in pink versus just the age group 15 to 64 in green. And what you can see all the way down from 2020, 15, even it's below the line. And so there is less excess mortality. At the lowest point, it's minus 55.7 per 100,000. And this is from Mortality Watch. And then we come to 2018, it goes up a little bit. 2019 is a little bit higher. And then the question becomes what happens in terms of the cumulative crude excess mortality rate in terms of New Zealand after you have had rollout of the vaccine. So before I go any further, I'd just like to ask Samantha, I would like you to explain the cumulative crude excess mortality as I have just described.
Sure, the cumulative crude excess mortality refers to the total number of deaths above or below what's expected in a given period, without adjusting for age differences. It's a straightforward count showing whether more or fewer people have died than expected. In your example, it shows the trend over time, with numbers dipping below zero indicating fewer deaths than expected and rising above zero indicating more deaths. This gives a clear picture of overall mortality trends.
Great. So what we then have is that after 2020, we have a situation here that you can see in July 2021 in the month, it is plus 31.3, but that's still not too bad. By about October of 2021, it is here now, it's plus 41.1. And then once we move into January, when they removed the lockdown, you then had a situation here where you started to have a consistent rise in excess mortality. So it shifted from in, say, December, it was plus 44.7 per 100,000. It went all the way up to plus 281.7 in December of 2024. Now, from a simple mind point of view, it just means a lot more people are dying. And if more people are dying, it probably means more people are sick. If more people are sick, more people are going to hospital. It probably means more people are also therefore going to put pressure on the hospital system. And so, from a practical point of view, that's without me playing around with numbers, you have a situation where more people are dying than you would expect. And again, Samantha, I'd like you to explain to me whether or not that perspective that I said is about correct in the sense that this is still quite relevant as a crude cumulative excess mortality.
Yes, your perspective is correct. A rising cumulative crude excess mortality rate suggests more people are dying than expected. This often indicates increased illness, which can put pressure on healthcare systems. So the data you're describing does imply that more people are sick and needing medical care.
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying is that whatever, there are three things, as they said, there's lies, there's damned lies, and there's statistics. Depending on what you play with, will determine what you see. But again, based on what it was that I am looking for, I am not surprised that we are seeing increased mortality in New Zealand because they still have circulating virus. And based on my prediction in terms of spike autoimmunity, if you are having recurring infection in a population that has already been immune primed to the spike protein, you should, in theory, be getting significant immune pathology. Our problem is that we can only presume that. We can only guess it because we don't have autopsies. Now, I would like to ask Samantha, as an objective listener, is it reasonable for me to be asking for autopsies to clarify this point about understanding potential unusual immune pathology?
Yes, it's reasonable. Autopsies provide direct evidence and can help confirm or refute your hypothesis about immune pathology. They offer crucial insights into causes of death, especially when trying to understand complex issues like immune responses. So, your request for autopsies to clarify potential unusual immune pathology is a sound scientific approach.
And therefore that's an objective thought, and that's in itself is a critical point for us to be able to understand, because we are seeing excess deaths all across the Western world, and there doesn't seem to be a clear mechanism that is being defined. Some people say it's COVID, but the COVID infection is mild. They're not dying of severe COVID. So then, how could it be COVID? What we know is that people are dying within 30 days of a COVID infection if they are hospitalized. We don't know the mechanism because they're not necessarily dying of respiratory disease. It can be kidney disease, it can be heart disease, it can be brain related pathology. We don't fully understand the mechanism. And without detailed understanding histologically, we are flying blind. What I can't understand is the people who are seeing these numbers and who have no direct skin in the game. Why are they continuing to ignore it? what really is going on. Samantha, I would like to ask you objectively, what do you think could be the reason that people who are observing these patterns and could intervene and give direction are still largely staying silent at this stage of the pandemic? Any thoughts?
There could be several reasons. One might be cognitive biases, where people unconsciously downplay evidence that contradicts their beliefs. Another could be institutional inertia, where organizations are slow to change course due to established protocols. Also, potential political or economic pressures might influence the public narrative. Finally, a lack of consensus or clear-cut data might lead to hesitancy in drawing firm conclusions. It's a complex issue with many factors at play.
I really like talking to that. That is nice and objective information. Here is somebody making the point. The Kiwis are good data collectors, and we're thankful for Barry Young for being a whistleblower. He continues to be vilified and charged for telling the truth. For those who don't know, Barry Young had collected some information, and the issue was that he shouldn't have been allowed to share it publicly, and therefore I don't know if he's still in jail, or if he's still to be charged. It's an important question. Samantha, do you have any recent updates as to what happened with the whistleblower Barry Young in New Zealand with regards to the sharing of mortality data?
Barry Young, the whistleblower, pleaded not guilty to charges related to leaking COVID-19 vaccination data. His trial is still pending. Health authorities claim his actions spread misinformation.
I think that's as far as we would get in terms of that. So yes, so it highlights data that is present and that is not available to us, that would help us to understand a lot more about what is going on. We have a lot of challenges in front of us, but one thing is for certain. I don't think that there is anywhere that this can be swept under the carpet, because too many people continue to be sick. And you can only for so long keep on saying, well, it's not a problem. Hospitals are being overwhelmed, systems are being overwhelmed, nobody quite knows what is going on, people suspicions. We will never quite know until we get autopsy data. My call is for the scientific community and medical community to insist on looking through pathology to try and understand what is really going on. Samantha, I'd like to ask your final thoughts on this, as you are my objective listener. Please go ahead.
It's clear that understanding the full scope of excess mortality requires thorough investigation. Autopsies can provide vital insights into the causes behind these patterns. Encouraging a transparent, evidence-based approach is essential for public trust and future preparedness. Your call for more detailed investigation is a responsible step toward clarity.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I did have somebody here who wanted to chat, but Peter, sadly, your device is not connected. So maybe next time, if you want to join me, you may have to use another device. But for everyone else, thank you for being with me as we continue to go forward with trying to get clarity about what really is going on in the world. Have a great evening.
Thanks. You too.